You know, they were successful there, and I know that the team itself started to really transition in about 1968 to where there was a long run of successful activity, and it was really built on a foundation of a ferocious defense that you and your line mates were part of. You only gave up 9.5 points a game, which is literally unheard of. What kind of confidence level did the Viking teams, especially on defense, have between 69 and 76 when you were so successful?
Well, I think, it would be fair to say is that we contributed to a lot of the changes that were made during that time and probably are responsible for the game that you see today. I would say that our front four, the Purple People Eaters, as they called us, that would include Jim Marshall, Alan Page, Gary Larson, and myself, and later Doug Sutherland, and occasionally the bench warmer Bob Lurchman. It was not a safe place to be in the pocket. When I came into the league, the pocket passer was the thing. The guy that could drop back, stand in the pocket, look around, pick his receiver, throw the ball for completion downfield. We would demolish the pocket. In other words, the safe place for the quarterback was not there because would come from one side, I would come from the other, and then you get Alan and Gary coming up that middle. We had a slogan, Jim and I, we're meet at the quarterback. But that was a very, very successful format that we had, and we could control the offense through our skills and uniqueness, a combination of both power, speed, and quickness, and just really knowledge of the game and enthusiasm for the game. We loved it. We loved to play the game. We loved to do what we did, and took great pride as our reputation grew and momentum of the Minnesota Vikings grew as one of the premier teams in there. We took great pride in that.
In that professional pride, were there any unofficial side bets between you and Page and Marshall and Larson on how many times you get to the quarterback or who will get there most?
That's really a good question. You wouldn't think so, but actually there was. We would want to make the tackle. In other words, I would want to make the tackle. Jim would want to make the tackle. Alan would want to make the tackle, or Gary would want to make the tackle. But it wasn't the kind of competition where we were jealous or envious of the other one. If we couldn't make it, we know that one of the other guys would and could. And so it really was a close-knit unit, and we felt that by playing together and playing our responsibility, that's how we would have success. And so it wasn't so much the individual accolades that we were looking for. It really was the fact that together as a unit, we took great pride, and we knew that we made each other better. That was the kind of thing that I think we were most proud of.
In 1969, you guys went 12-2, and you hosted a playoff game, for the first time, and you went ahead to beat the Rams in a divisional playoffs, and then won the NFL championship. Most people don't realize the Vikings, in fact, have won an NFL championship before the leagues merged in 1969 against the Browns. What are your recollections of those first playoff game wins at home?
Well, it was great. The idea was, I think the year before we were just up and coming. We could feel our growth and stuff like that. And we played against Baltimore, but we lost in the first round. And it was mostly due to experience, not so much our talents, but we just didn't have the experience. And it does take experience in the playoff games, and that's what we gained. Through our success in going to the playoffs and repetitiously playing in the playoffs, we gained that playoff experience. That really helps you during the season. We knew we had to win. We had to win the games early in the season to give us a chance to get into the playoffs. If we could, to kind of distance ourselves from the second-place team. This was all part of our strategy. That was part of the mentality. And you wanted to get home field advantage. You wanted to do all those things. All these things were in your favor, and these things helped build up your confidence. And we felt like playing in Minnesota, playing before our home crowd, playing in the cold, all the things that were in our favor gave us really, it's not certainly a physical advantage, a psychological advantage. And so we would go into those games with a tremendous confidence.
Hey, you did it for us today, you moved. Way to go.
Hey, look here. Interesting, because if you're a Minnesota fan with empathy, you'd feel bad for the Rams having to come up there all the time in the cold, and obviously that was an intimidating factor. What was your experience with the cold? Did it bother you? Did it get to the point where it was so cold or it was hard to concentrate and play, or does that just go out of your mind once you're on the field?
Well, it does, and it's cold on both sides of the line. It wasn't that we didn't get cold. We knew that we had a game to play and we had a job to do, and that we were not going to let that cold distract from us, because regardless of how cold it was, you had to play, and our goal was to win the game. And so if we didn't win the game, we felt that, boy, it was almost like a double defeat. You had to go out and play in the cold. You had to get something for it. I mean, there had to be a reward for going out there to doing what we were doing. And to lose the game would have been like really mud in your face. It was, literally.
1970, the Vikings went to the first Super Bowl and favored by 12.5 against the Chiefs. And the game started okay. People don't remember the Vikings drove pretty deep into Kansas City territory on the opening drive. But after that stall, they never really recovered. Do you believe the Chiefs really did anything you didn't expect? And were they actually truly the better team? Or is it a situation where the Vikings took the Chiefs too lightly in the game?
No, I don't think we took the teams too lightly, but they were a great team, and I think they were really a great physical team. The difference in that game, the score was only 16-9. I'm not sure how we scored, but I think the difference in that game was Jan Stinnerud, because they never really got a first down, and Jan kicked the ball. When we punted, they got the ball. Without scoring, without getting the first down, they got 3 points. I mean, psychologically, that's kind of mind-boggling, because we were doing all we could do defensively, and we really held their offense to basically no score. They made a big play late in the third quarter. It gave them a big first down where they got a touchdown, but they played really strongly against our offense. And I think the difference is that we were not able to score defensively. We were not able to give them points or give them the advantage that we had during the season. And that kind of was one of the things that we really weren't able to accomplish in the Super Bowls that we played in to the extent that we had during the regular season. We were much on par and much on the same level with the other teams, so we did not have we were defensive equivalent, but I wouldn't think that we were overpoweringly defensive for those teams we played in the Super Bowl.
Early on in the late 60s and early 70s, the offenses didn't have the firepower, as you mentioned, compared to the defense. Finally, in 1972 and beyond, you got a quarterback in Fran Tarkenton, you got Chuck Foreman and John Gilliam on the team, so the offense started to really do their part. And little did people know that the 1976 NFC Championship game would be the last one the Minnesota Vikings would win up to this day. But what people do remember is on defense, you were nothing short of dominating the game. You had 10 tackles, you had a couple of sacks and a pass defense. What are your memories of the 1976 NFC Championship game against the Rams?
Well, I think a lot of things that went on in that game, and those are things we probably were the best matchup against Oakland Raiders and probably did not play our best game. That was probably the game that we should have won and probably could have won, and probably the game that I really have personally the most regrets about, because I don't think that was a game that we played really well, either offensively or defensively, and certainly it should have been one of the games that we did win, but did not. And part of that is that we ended up with, we went in, we dominated them early in the game. We ended up with the ball on the 1.5-yard line. We had blocked a punt, made a big defensive play.
People out there in the field have been to the Rose Bowl. They know it. Here's a guy with a low snap. It's good. First punt he's ever had blocked. And the Vikings have the ball. On the open 3-yard line. He never had a punt block.
He has now.
It looked like to me got in there. And that's the big play the Vikings are famous for. Their 16th block kick of the season. They said nobody could block Ray Guy's punts, and the Vikings have just done it.
And then we go in and we can't capitalize on it. And the reason I mention that is because I think that sometimes the fan has a hard time understanding, and I can only do this in retrospect, certainly not at the time I couldn't understand it. But the fact that we couldn't score, I think that took a lot out of us. And what I'm getting to is that as players, you're very emotional, it's very psychological. I think that just emotionally took a lot out of us early in the game. And I think from that, we probably had a hard time of staying in the game and coming back. And eventually, the Raiders overtook us and won the game. Had we scored that, or even had we not let that particular play affect us emotionally the way that it did, and if we'd have kept up the fight and stayed strong in that early part of the game, we would have won. So that's a game that we had to play over again. If I had to play over again, that's one that I would play again, and I think we'd win.
With you, being All-Pro 5 times, being nominated to the Pro Bowl 6 times, what was the key to your longevity and success? You played until 1979 with almost no injury at all. Even when you had an injury, you'd play through it. What was your secret?
Well, it's preparedness, really, and devotion to the game, or love for the game. Football, I enjoyed football. I enjoyed playing with the guys I played with. I enjoyed everything about it, I enjoyed certainly the success. It was a game, and football is a game where you can measure yourself. You can test yourself. You get almost immediately results. You can measure your progress. And there were challenges. You're challenged week to week, season to season. And so there's you talk about a reality show. I mean, professional sports is it, and NFL is certainly it. I mean, there's nothing more real than football. So if you want to know how you're doing, you just check yourself. You look around, and because that challenge is there, and if you're not doing it, and if you're not living up to par, you're going to know. And so that challenge, that created that excitement in me, and even sometimes today when I think about that, it's fantastic. That's what the game is, and that's what the game's about.
They trail 7-0. Here comes Larry Smith from the other side. Carl Eller after him, and Eller gets him. Chief, the Rams are going to try and establish the running game, as Don Meredith enunciated earlier.
In your career, you registered what's still a Viking record of 130.5 sacks, and so many of the running backs of that era, bragged about getting 1,000 yards because not many did it. But you actually had over 1,000 yards in lost yardage that you created when you sacked quarterbacks. Was there a particular quarterback in your entire career that you relished sacking? Somebody either was difficult to get to and you liked to get there, or you just didn't like them and you enjoyed getting to them?
Well, yeah, I think I probably had a few more sacks there. And the other thing, too, is that, coming out of Minnesota, I was a complete ball player. And the fact that we played the run, the Big Ten was pretty much a run conference. So I take great pride in my run game, too, which a lot of guys, today don't really have to concern them about. And I would chase guys all over the field, both from sideline to sideline. So athletically, I really was one of the best players, and a lot of the techniques and things that I used and qualities that I had influenced later players that played that position. But the question about who was a quarterback, Bart Starr was certainly a guy that we faced a couple times. He would get us, he would throw that pass on, 3rd and 1 to a Dale or somebody like that. So he was a crafty guy. He was a really smart guy, great field general. Johnny Unitas, the times we played against him, he was a great guy to make the play. I played against Joe Namath maybe once or twice. These guys had great awareness on the field. And our own quarterback, Fran Tarkenton, I admire Fran Tarkenton because you couldn't really bottle him up. I mean, he would get positive yards. And that's what I like about players, and particularly quarterbacks. They're able to make a play in a disastrous situation. And what I hated about quarterbacks was the same thing. And the quarterback that I hated the most that would do that was like Roger Staubach, because we'd have him bottle up and he would skirt out or he'd run. You know, he wasn't a scrambler, but he'd get out of the pocket when he couldn't throw the pass, and he'd get, you know, positive yards sometimes for first down and keep that ball alive. And he was very good at doing that. And you know, so that was just another tribute to his skill.
And you mentioned your style of play, and is there anybody when you watch games in the NFL today that either you admire, like to watch, or remind you a little bit of your style when you played?
Well, I like our own quarterback. I mean, our own defensive end. He does really a great job. He's aggressive, and he goes in there and he plays. He plays all out too, and he's an every down player. So I think that's the kind of player I like. He brings it, and he comes, and he's there, and he has enthusiasm for the game, and he makes a difference in the game. So I think that's probably the guy that I associate or identify most closely with.
Okay, Jared Allen, you mean, right?
Of course, Jared Allen, yes. Yeah. He plays the other side, though. He plays the side that Marshall played, but Jared's a good guy. He comes in, and he's, you know, he makes the play, and he's a difference. He's a difference maker in the game.
You look at the game today, and it's obviously a lot different than when you retired in 1979. Is it a game that you would still enjoy playing today? Do you like how it's evolved?
I don't know if I would like it today. You know, I mean, and I say that, of course I would like it because I love the game and I would love to play the game. I think Jared is probably still closer to the prototype in that he's in at least 60-70% of the plays. He's not just a run or pass down player. And I think because of the way that I played and during my era, that there's a significant relationship between the number of snaps you take or the number of downs you play and the essence of the game itself. There's a momentum. There's all those things that go on. I think you are more part of the game, either contributing or defaulting or whatever. So I don't consider these guys today as full ball players. You know, they're kind of bit players, you know, and therefore I don't qualify them to be the athletes that I was.
Roman Gabriel trying to cash in on this big opportunity for Los Angeles. Lester Josephson is down to the goal line, but he is not in. Both tight ends, Truax and Klein, are in the ball game now. Second down and goal from about 2 feet away. Gabriel, quarterback sneak. He did not make it. The middle of that Minnesota line. But Gabriel keeping the ball on the quarterback sneak. Immediately called time when he heard the whistle. Gabriel tries again. He did not make it. He did not make it, and the Vikings hold.
That's going to be tough to live with.
Yes, sir. We'll be talking about that one for a long time to come.
Or to be the kind of player that I was, and I try to equate that, and I don't think I'm being unfair, but the point is that every snap of the ball, I was in there when the other team had the ball, and there's not many players that can say that today. And I think that that's a big, big difference.
Carl, the last part of our interview is simply a rapid-fire session where I'll give you one word, and what we're looking for is a one-word or one-sentence response from you. Does that sound okay?
Yeah, it sounds fine. I just hope I can do it.
All right. First name is Joe Cap.
Oh, great. Passionate.
Okay. Alan Page.
Oh, the best. You know, he's just a great guy. There isn't one sentence or word to describe Alan. He's a standard in so many ways. I really admire Alan.
Okay. The 1975 Hail Mary game versus Dallas.
Hey, we should have got a penalty on that, no question.
We all agree with you. Chuck Foreman.
Oh, Chuck Foreman was a great running back. He was innovative. He brought moves to the game. He's a great, great player.
Milt Sunday.
Milt Sunday was kind of the workman's guy. He's the real hero, a real workman kind of guy. Blue collar, which is great.
All right. Lonnie Warwick.
Crazy man.
Fran Tarkenton.
Oh, excellent quarterback. Love of the game, knowledge of the game, skill of the game, passionate, great guy.
Okay. Fred Cox.
Fred, innovator. Fred's a patent holder, too. A smart guy, dedicated, gentleman, student of the game.
And finally, Metropolitan Stadium.
Metropolitan Stadium. It was a place to play. It's the Viking history, the Viking lore. It will forever go down in history. Greater than probably any other stadium. It's too bad that it had to go.
Those are the questions that we really wanted to pick your brain about today, and trust me, we could go on for another hour with you because the insight's fantastic for us. But I also wanted to mention to folks who may not be aware of it, even with Moose 81 and the work that Carl's doing with the NFL retired players, he's also got a creative side to himself with Carl Eller Studios in Minneapolis. If you wouldn't mind, Carl, would you tell people a little bit about what you do at Carl Eller Studios?
Well, Carl Studios we are a ceramics studio. We do ceramics. In other words, it's original pieces we take and we make from clay. I turn them on the wheel, and I do the carvings and the glazing, or I have a partner that does the glazing mostly. But the idea behind that is that I see the clay, not necessarily block of clay, but the result of clay as kind of a canvas. So use the clay as a paint or something that you can make an image. And the excitement for me is that that's something that's coming out of my head. Then I can bring it into a three-dimensional object. That's really fascinating. And I'm really proud of every piece. And it is your creation, but it's something that I grow an attachment to. So what I want the people to understand is that when they buy a piece of the work from the studio, they are taking a part of me. I have an attachment to that piece. So even though it's inanimate, a piece of clay or a piece of ceramic that's been fired and glazed, I have really spent hours and hours with this piece. And I think if they have it and study it, they're going to see me and they're going to reflect back on Carl Eller when they have that in their homes or in their offices or wherever. And that's what I love about it.
Well, I hope for all those folks listening who haven't been to the studios, if you drop by Minneapolis, I think you're in for a treat. And if you don't live in town, look on the website. It's at carlellerstudios.com. And a couple things. It shows a lot of examples of the things that Carl's worked on. But we've got a lot of music buffs as part of our Vike fans member community. He's got a line of specialized guitars that are autographed that are fantastic. So take a peek at that as well. It's some really neat stuff.
Yeah, it's great stuff. It's stuff that we have that comes out of the studio, and I have partners that help me with that. But the thing is being creative, taking something and then ending up with a project or a product that's much, much different than the ingredients or the sum of the ingredients that went into making it.
Well, Carl, we appreciate you taking the time to share your memories with Viking fans here on VikeFans.com. And I wanted to ask in closing, any thoughts you might have about the Minnesota Vikings or even the 2013 squad?
I think it's going to be exciting this year, the 2013 Minnesota Vikings. A lot of it hinges on Chris Ponder. I'm sort of in the mixed bag with Chris. He's a great guy. I like him. We'll see if this is a year where he can bring the troops all the way.
Would you want to try to stop Adrian Peterson if you were on defense against him?
No, I wouldn't. He's such a great runner. He's a beautiful runner. And I think the one thing that the players, and this goes to the guys in the Hall of Fame too, and what I've learned since I've been in the Hall of Fame, is how hard these guys work. You respect their work. You respect their art. That's how I relate their craft is what they do. This is one disagreement that I have with Alan Page. I think it is an art form. It's not just talent, but you have to be creative. And it's beautiful. You know, when you see Adrian run, you know it's a result of hard work. He's put his mind and thoughts to being the best that he can be. And it's fantastic. So what we see are the results of that hard work.
Well, again, we appreciate the memories you gave us during your career and continue to do so off the field as well. We encourage our listeners to look for and play the new Moose 81 game and visit Carl Eller Studios if you're in the Twin Cities. And if you don't live in Minneapolis, visit Carl Eller Studios' website at www.carlellerstudios.com. Again, Carl, thanks for joining VikeFans.com, and we look forward to seeing you at a Viking Super Bowl soon.
All right, bye now. Thank you, Tom.